Hello my book besties, welcome to my June wrap up. I read a total of 10 books this month, which is absolutely amazing. That is the most books I've ever read in 1 month. I'm super excited to be sharing all the books that I read and give you my thoughts and my ratings. Also, I posted a book shopping vlog last week, so if you haven't yet seen that, I'll have that link down below. That video was so much fun to film and edit, and I also show you the books that I picked up while I went book shopping, so go check that out if you haven't already. And of course, let me know what your favorite book you read this month, and let's get into the books I read in June. First up, we've got The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin, which is a YA fantasy romance, and I have had this on my TBR since last year and I finally read it, so I'm so happy. This is really cool because it's surrounding seasonal magic. So we've got obviously the 4 seasons: summer, autumn, winter and spring, and every witch is kind of tied to one season except for Clara, who is a very rare ever witch who can control all seasons, except her magic's kind of out of control, very volatile, and causes her loved ones to die, so she's really scared of using her magic. But then there is a huge climate crisis that's happening in her world, and she's the only one that can actually save the world because she's got the power of all 4 seasons. But it's basically her trying to learn how to control her magic. You get to know and learn more about the different seasons and the different like special powers that they have, and the seasons reminded me so much of the different Hogwarts houses, so I love that. There was also a lot of character development and character growth in this book, which I absolutely love. The romance in this book was so freaking cute, very wholesome, very warm, and I just loved it. It was so cute. This book was like a hug from the earth. Like, that's basically the best way I can describe it. And I totally understand why people say this gives off like folklore from Taylor Swift vibes, but I'd say folklore plus read Taylor's version mixed together would be this book. Loved it. I rated this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read a thriller, and that was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. Oh my goodness, I did not expect to like this as much as I did, but the plot twist, fantastic. Did not see it coming at all. This is following our main character, Chloe. 20 years ago, her dad was convicted as a serial killer and went to jail. Now 20 years has passed. She is obviously an adult and she is now a psychologist. She's engaged and she's just trying to move on from her past. But then, close to the 20th anniversary of her dad being convicted, the same crimes are happening again in her small town, and the crimes are basically identical to what happened 20 years ago, and Chloe is trying to figure out who is this copycat murderer and why are the teenage girls that are going missing kind of also connected to her, or just people that she has bumped into before. The whole time I was reading this book, I thought I knew who the killer was going to be, and I was like, oh, this is so predictable. But oh my gosh, the plot twist towards the end I did not see coming at all. That person didn't even cross my mind. The plot twist itself is what made me bump this rating higher, because the start of the book was a little bit slow. Throughout the middle to the end, like, you get so hooked you just want to keep going. But the rating that I did give this book was a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read It Only Happens in the Movies by Holly Bourne. I saw Haley Pham read this, so obviously I had to read it as well. This is a YA romance, but it's not like your typical romance. So we've got Audrey, who's our main character. She is just going through a lot. Her parents divorced and her dad has essentially chosen his new family over her and her mum and her brother, and she's basically kind of left to look after her mum because her mum is really just, her mental health is really deteriorating. Her childhood home is now going up for sale, which she's really emotional about, and she's also dealing with a breakup. Then she gets a job at the local cinema and she meets Harry, who is known to be like this movie cliche, like a typical romance movie cliche, and they're working together, and he is actually an aspiring movie director and Audrey is an aspiring actress. They end up working together on this movie and they end up getting closer, even though Audrey has this like huge barrier up with having so many bad experiences with love. I feel like I'm not really explaining this book that great, so I'm sorry, but I did really like this book. I love the ending that she chose for herself. There was just a lot of character growth with her kind of finding acceptance with everything that's going on and ending up choosing herself at the end. Like, I absolutely adored that. I personally didn't really like the romance in this book. I just loved the character development. I was not really shipping her and Harry together, but I really did like the character growth in this book. And it was fun to actually see a book kind of like challenge romance movies and like the typical romance cliches. So that was interesting. Yeah, I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. This book I read for the Hello Summer Winter Readathon, which I did film a reading vlog for, so keep an eye out on that. It'll hopefully be up next week. But for that readathon, I read The Tourist Attraction by Sarah Morgan Taylor. This is a grumpy sunshine, small town Alaskan romance, which you guys know I love my small town romances, especially ones set in Alaska. They just are such a huge comfort to me. So in this book, we follow Graham. He is a local of Moose Springs, Alaska, and he owns a diner called the Tourist Trap, which every tourist always visits. Basically like a rite of passage when you visit the small town. But he is super grumpy towards all of the tourists because he just doesn't like them. Then we've got Zoe. Zoe is a tourist and she is taking her first trip up to Moose Springs, which she's been saving all her money for because this has been like her #1 bucket list destination. And she obviously meets Graham at the Tourist Trap, and Graham's kind of already taken by her from the first instance because she's not like the other tourists, because she seems to be down to earth. Like, she's literally wearing a Mickey Mouse sweater and like glasses and like is like the typical, like, you know, girl next door. And they strike up a friendship because Zoe's best friend basically ditches her at every tourist activity. So Graham kind of like feels sorry for her and doesn't want her to like experience those things alone. So he kind of goes along with her to all of these tourist activities like whale watching and all those fun things like that. And their connection grows through this book. Setting was just so good, and I love the side characters as well. But I do feel like this book is like almost 400 pages long, and I personally feel like it felt a little bit dragged out at some point. I really like the first like 3/4 of the book, but I feel like the last quarter of the book kind of felt really dragged on, which was a little bit annoying. And I also didn't really like Zoe's best friend Lana because she was just not a true friend. Like, she just kept on ditching Zoe and was just not a real friend in my opinion. I did end up rating this one a 3.5 stars because I did enjoy this book, but it wasn't anything that I want to give 4 or 5 stars because there were like a lot of misses in this book. But still, I really did enjoy it, and the cover is super cute. Okay, I have a kind of unpopular opinion with my next book, which is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This follows Chloe Brown, who is a chronically ill computer geek, and she almost has a near-death experience, and then she kind of like reevaluates her life and is like, I have not lived my life the way I should. So she comes up with this Get a Life list, kind of like a bucket list with all the things she wants to do before she dies. And then this is where Red comes in, who is her neighbor and also kind of her landlord as well, and he helps her complete this Get a Life list, and Chloe is going to help him come up with a website for his business. This book was okay, but I don't really understand the hype, and I feel like that's definitely going to be a very unpopular opinion because I know this is a very, very popular and beloved book, but I just found it boring. And also, I didn't really see the chemistry between Chloe and Red. I definitely saw them as like really good like best friends, but like no romance, even though like there's like a lot of spice in this book and like they're meant to be romantic. But it was just like, I don't know, the romance scenes were like awkward for me to read because I didn't really ship the characters together because I saw them just as friends. And yeah, I just thought it was average. Like, it wasn't bad, but like it wasn't like amazing. So I rated this one 3 stars. It wasn't the best book. It was kind of a letdown, to be honest. Then we've got What Are We Doing About Zoya by Anisha Bhatia. This is following Zoya, who is not the perfect ideal Indian daughter. She's 26, she's very independent, very career focused, unmarried and overweight. And her family set her up with an arranged marriage, and she kind of doesn't really have a choice because she doesn't really want to be an outcast in her society. And then there's a job offer that comes up to go to New York, and she's kind of like stuck between trying to fit into her Indian society but also wanting to follow her dreams. But oh my goodness, this book was so damn boring. There was so much body shaming and fat phobia in this book that it was so uncomfortable to read. I did not like that at all. overall. I rated this one 2 stars, and I feel like that's being generous, but yeah, I just didn't really enjoy this book. But a book that I did enjoy was Paris is Always a Good Idea by Jen McKinley. This book gave me all the European summer vibes, which was exactly what I wanted, because it is the middle of winter, or the start of winter actually, in Australia, and it's really cold and I just want to be in Europe right now. So we follow our main protagonist Chelsea, who is a 30-year-old woman. She's still grieving her loss of her mother that died 7 years ago, and her dad is now getting remarried and she's not really understanding why, and she is kind of against it. And she actually decides to go back to Ireland, France and Italy, because those 3 countries are the last places that she fell in love and was truly happy. So she's wanting to feel those feelings again. So she tries to track down the 3 guys that she was like in love with 7 years ago when she was on her trip abroad. This book, I will say, the first couple of chapters before she actually goes traveling is so boring, but when the travel content hits in, it is so good. Like, I could picture all the places that she was going to, and it was just so cute. It was a fluffy romance, light-hearted read, which is exactly what I wanted, and I just loved following Chelsea through to France, Italy and Ireland. It was just so good and I just absolutely loved it. The romance in this book was just so wholesome and cute and sweet. There's a little bit of enemies to lovers, which we always love, and it was also like a lot of character growth and like finding yourself as well in your 30s, which I love. Summer Under the Stars by Catherine Ferguson. The cover on this is gorgeous. It's actually what made me pick this book up in the first place. But this book is marketed as a romance, but I would say it's not really much of a romance book, to be honest. It's like 10% romance, 90% like character development, I guess. So we've got Daisy. She's just been having a really tough year. She lost her adoptive mother recently. She is hating her job and is trying to become a writer, and she just really needs a break. So she organizes a glamping trip for her and her boyfriend to go on, and the place that she goes for the glamping trip is actually where she thinks her birth mother is, because she's on a journey to find out who her birth mother is and try to reconnect with her. And this is also meant to be like a romantic glamping trip away with her boyfriend, but her boyfriend is just the worst person ever. Like, he is so unsupportive, he's so mean, and he just is not the greatest boyfriend, and it's so clear that they do not work at all. And Daisy kind of knows this as well, but she's kind of just like justifying his actions, and she kind of just tries to let it go because she doesn't want to lose him after already losing her adoptive mother. I thought this book was okay still, because it still had that interesting plot line of Daisy trying to find out who her birth mother is. But yeah, this book was kind of a letdown because I was expecting like a cute little romance read, and it was not even romantic. Like, her boyfriend was literally like the worst person ever. I still did end up rating this one a 3 out of 5 stars though, because I still did think it was an okay book. It was just, you know, it wasn't a romance and it wasn't anything that was like amazing. Then I read a middle grade horror thriller graphic novel, which was the Fear Book Club. I've never actually read a graphic novel before, unless you count like Garfield comic strips, because I have read them. Oh, and I have read Simpsons comics, but I don't know if they fall under the graphic novel category. I suppose they do. Anyways, I read this graphic novel. The artwork is absolutely stunning. I'm just going to read the back of the book for you. When Whit Garcia joins a yearbook club, he meets 3 other misfits who will never be voted most likely to succeed, and the ghosts of past students. But are these phantoms only here to haunt the hallways, or are they warning to Whit and his new friends, an omen about the darkness that spreads from their classrooms into the rest of the world and beyond? Now Whit must solve the supernatural secrets before these spirits, or he and his yearbook club will be voted most likely to join them. I don't really think the middle grade genre is personally for me. Maybe that's why I didn't really enjoy this book that much. I really enjoyed like seeing all the artwork, because the artwork was absolutely stunning. I did rate this one a 3 out of 5 stars, mainly just because I love the artwork. And the last book I have to talk about, I actually don't have the physical copy with me because I returned it to the library, but that was The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This was one of my anticipated reads of 2022, and it was a disappointment, unfortunately. This is a dual POV, and it's also set from the past and the present. 40 years ago, there were these lady killer murders that happened in this small town, and and Beth Greer was like the main suspect of these murders, except there was no real like clear evidence to put her in jail, but everyone in town just suspected her and she was never able to live a normal life. But this has technically been a cold case for many years. And then in present day, we are following Shay, who is a true crime blogger, and she actually gets to interview Beth for her blog and to actually uncover the secret to see if Beth is the murderer or is she just covering up for someone else. And during these interviews, they're all actually done at Beth's mansion where her father was also murdered, and there's just like this supernatural like ghost activity that is also happening there. So it's kind of like true crime mixed with a paranormal thriller into one. I loved the eeriness of the book. Like it was just like a very atmospheric read, and the first half of the book, absolutely adored it. It was just so interesting, but you pretty much get all the answers by the end of part 1. So part 2 is kind of all set in the past, which was so draining to read. I was just really bored, which was really unfortunate considering you're not normally meant to be bored during a thriller. I can't remember what I rated this book. I think I rated this one 3 out of 5 stars because I really liked the first half of the book. It's just the second half really knocked down ratings. Those were all the books that I read for the month of June. I hope you guys enjoyed watching and hearing about all the books that I read. Make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up if you did enjoy watching, and subscribe to my channel down below. I post new videos every single week, and also follow me on my Instagram. I have a personal account where I post more fashion and lifestyle content, and then I have a Bookstagram account that I share with my bestie Ali, where we post our current reads, book reviews, and all other bookish content. And also follow me on my Goodreads. I will also have my Amazon wishlist link down below as well, and I will see you guys next week with a new video. Bye.